welcome back, many of you. Some of you are joining us for as we reach lunchtime on the East Coast, and everyone's woken up on the West Coast. I'm really looking forward to this panel. I mean, we talked about the quality of the schools and the professionals that are with us, and I think this particular session really embodies that. I'm delighted to welcome Blair Mannix. Blair is the Director of MBA Admissions at Wharton, and Blair promised me that when she puts her hands behind her thighs, she's unable to speak because she typically likes to communicate with her hands. We're going to have to test that on Zoom a little later on. Soojin Kwon, who of course is always elegantly dressed, but if you note, it's always in the colors of U of M. Soojin, it's lovely to have you with us. Soojin, of course, is the Managing Director of the full-time MBA program at Michigan Ross. Danielle Richie is joining us from UNC Kenan-Flagler. Danielle is a Senior Associate Director at the school. And Rod Garcia, to make sure that we have gender balance on our panel. Rod, of course, is the Assistant Dean at MIT Sloane, and we'll be talking both about the full-time MBA program, Rod, and I'm sure the Sloan Fellows program as well. It's been a long, exhausting year, and we haven't finished yet, right? Still looking at deadlines that stretch into the summer before we even think about how COVID and the economic downturn might affect sudden spike in applications next year. So we just wanted to take perhaps the first 10 minutes of the panel for each of you to share from your school perspectives, what you're seeing, both for the intake for the fall. I'm sure we have many people that we're eagerly hoping to arrive, whether in North Carolina, Massachusetts, Philadelphia, or Michigan. How you're getting over those hurdles, and of course the flexibility that's involved bringing in that class, and then perhaps we'll turn our attention to 2021 and beyond. So Blair, if we can start with you, and do use your hands as you speak up.
I'm going to try really hard not to. Although as we all transition to this virtual environment, I'm used to, as all of my colleagues are, being up on a microphone with hundreds of people in the room. And so this is, your hands play better when you're in a big room. They don't play as well when you're on Zoom. So I just want to point that self-criticism out to myself. But yeah, thank you, Matt, for that question and the opportunity to talk about this in detail and more broadly. And then most importantly, really directly with all the students, whether admitted, prospective, that logged on. Yeah, it's been a crazy 7 weeks. The University of Pennsylvania closed this upcoming Friday. It'll be 7 weeks ago. So Wharton has been operating remotely and moving their classes online only for 7 weeks. So I know, different portions of the country in different places. And the way myself and my colleagues in the MBA admissions office kind of have been looking at everything to answer your questions, what are we seeing? I like to break it down into three distinct things that we need to address. And then kind of how we're addressing them. And the first one was we went remote on the 17th, I believe it was maybe the 15th of March. And we were in the throes of our round 2 admissions committee, trying to get the round 2 admitted students out the door. So the first mountain we had to climb was, how do you run admissions committee and make thoughtful, nuanced, decisions in a virtual environment? And that's kind of the first thing we got off the ground. We were really excited to be able to admit our class the 26th of March with no delays, no lag time. And I really think that our process actually really worked. So that was like kind of the first thing that we saw. Second thing we needed to do really quickly was connect them to each other, right? So our main thing is community building. How do we build community between our round 1 matriculants and our round 2 admitted students? One of the greatest projects I've been involved in to date at Wharton in my career at Penn and Wharton, which is almost 15 years, has been what we built in the 3 weeks between the time when we realized we were going to have to go virtual and April 17th. We built a really cool platform that we call Wharton HQ. It's built on the back of the Facebook Workplace app. So it has live sessions, it has community interactions, and we've seen 180,000 interactions between our students. We can look at the analytics on it. Each student has about 133 different connections they make per day. And that's liking posts, that's viewing posts, that's writing messages to each other. So Wharton HQ has been one of the best things I've done. And that's something that we're seeing, something that we're operationalizing and have been for the past 2 weeks. It will be wrapping up for round 2 on Monday, our deposit deadline, but it will continue on into the summer so we can make sure that we're connecting students in a really robust way. And then the last thing, that we're seeing that we're really doubling down on, thinking about working through is how we remain committed to our students, how we approach them with compassion and compassionate decision-making as we go from, Wharton's May 4th deposit deadline through the summer. And I'm talking about deferrals. I'm talking about international visa issues. How do I push out communications that show our students that we are really trying to meet them in a compassionate, place where we really want to be there for them. And so that's kind of what we've turned our head to now, making sure that they feel supported one-on-one by our staff and alumni as we go through the summer in the lead up to the academic year in the fall.
Right. And I mean, there's no one answer because you're faced with so many factors. And, you said earlier that, you're up until late into the night and I guess working with the team, bringing in the class. And I think we'll be busy in the coming weeks just in terms of as much communication and dialogue. It sounds like HQ will be a very important platform to be able to share. In terms of, is it broken down into sort of domestic and international, or are the sort of challenges that the incoming class are facing universal?
Are you asking about our HQ platform? Is it broken down into that, or the way we're approaching?
For the incoming class, because both international students that have been connected now with the school for several months and looking forward to their place in September, are you seeing very different sort of challenges that each of them are facing?
Well, certainly they're different in the way that, the visa, for international students and no visa, this is our core issue in our industry right now. But I would say actually the commonality between international students and domestic students, and I'm sure this is one that, Rod and Soojin and Danielle can agree with, the virtual start is the huge lingering question. And I think the tough thing for all institutions, and I'll let them, chime in, the tough thing for all institutions is our business schools are tied to large institutions, and they're making a call at the institutional level. And we are just one school and one program that's trying to flow into that system. And so I think, and rightfully so, that our students, and at least what I've experienced from my calls this last week, 10 days, I think they're rightfully frustrated that we haven't been able to give them answers on fall start times. But I think my one kind of, communication would be, we really want the answer too. And I think I have a glass half full personality, but I really do think that the industry is moving towards getting some sort of subset of students on campus in the fall. That is what we do for a living. That is our lifeblood, right? Getting students on the fall, I believe, is where most institutions will be looking to be heading. Just that sometimes those decisions at an institutional level can't come as quickly as many of our students would like. And that's something that keeps me up at night right now.
Right. Now, of course, Soojin, the decision with Scott to launch an online MBA a year or two ago is suddenly looking very prescient, or at least provided, I guess, a platform to then handle the last 2-3 months with students. What have you seen in the last couple of months? How you see that working through the summer, even as you work with flexible deadlines and bringing in the class for the fall?
So, speaking to the online learning format first, I've been surprised and really happy to hear that a lot of our students have said it's been a really good experience. It provides for a different kind of interaction where more people can actually participate and they feel more engaged in some ways. So before students get too worried about a virtual experience, there are some upsides to it, and being able to engage more frequently with their professors has been really positive for a lot of our students, because faculty have been really accessible and willing to hold extra office hours and respond to emails very quickly. So that's been a real positive. We've seen very similar things to Blair. We have been hearing from a lot of our prospective students and our admitted students concerned about what's the fall going to look like. And we would very much like to give them answers that we don't have. Like at Wharton, we operate at the university level for those kinds of decisions. So we are waiting and seeing what the public health guidelines will tell us. And we hope to know more in the coming months, weeks and months. But with so much ambiguity for schools and students and prospects alike, we've been focusing our efforts on being as supportive and transparent as ever. So we've held a couple town halls with the dean and myself, one for admitted students and one for prospective students this past Saturday. And our admissions team has been even more proactive than we've been in the past, talking one-on-one with admitted students, understanding what their concerns are, responding to their needs, working to build communities through small group virtual chats among admitted students, webinars with our alumni in a variety of industries, access that we wouldn't have offered before because we're so used to thinking in terms of in-person experiences or live person-to-person experiences. Now going virtual, there's so many more possibilities in having conversations with people in our community. we're getting our admitted students together through something called Small World, where they get to meet each other in a virtual format and meet fewer students and have better bonding. And then having chats with current students. We've got a whole slate of summer engagement activities planned so that students are onboarded. Even though we're not able to do some live events in person, we're trying to get them prepared to start for a live start in the fall. And we're contingency planning for every possibility.
And as you handle all of those questions, typically if an applicant gets that acceptance letter from any one of your 4 schools, there's joy, there's that sort of looking forward to the fall planning, this exciting new chapter in their lives. Do you see that there are 1 or 2 areas that are sort of emerge more than others? Is it sort of the external factors, not just of campus closure versus being open, but worries about embassies and applications? What are the questions perhaps that you face more than any other?
So they're worried about, obviously, the visa office is not opening, but also will they be able to get summer internships in the US? And so we're working very actively to stand up an internship requirement as part of our curriculum so that international students will be able to get the CPT required to be eligible for summer internships. We're trying to look for every avenue possible to make their experience as similar to the on-campus experience as possible and all of the opportunities that would be afforded with it, including leadership development experiences that were that have been in person previously. We're figuring out how can we deliver a similar experience and similar learning through a virtual format. And the faculty director of our Sanger Leadership Center is working really hard to make that happen. You mentioned us having an online MBA program. That's one of the benefits of already having gone down that path. We have experience in standing up things that would work in a virtual format. So I'm pretty excited about what's possible.
Right. Well, that's that cup half full that you share with Blair. That makes a full glass, right? If we join them together, Danielle. We talk about this empathy, this understanding, things beyond applicants' control, how flexible we're being. So, how are you managing the coming months as you look at the intake for September and the fall?
So we have made a bunch of changes, like many schools, to our admissions requirements. We've extended our round 3 deadline to the end of May. We're accepting applications without test scores and applicants to take the online versions of the tests after submitting their application. We have a bigger wait list than we've had in previous years, and we're making offers earlier than we have in the past. We just had our round 2 deposit deadline yesterday, and we were really pleasantly surprised to see that our yield is actually slightly above what it was last year. And I think a lot of it comes from staying in close contact with our admits and making sure that they feel supported. And we're trying to provide as much information as we can when we have it.
Right. So yes, there's always that metric of yield. Danielle, your perspective from UNC and how you help all of those applicants with their questions, being as flexible as possible in the coming months.
Yeah, great question. So at UNC, and as Blair and Soojin and Rod have said, we're human. So we really want to be empathetic to how people are feeling, and we want to make sure that we are there for them. So we have extended our application deadline as well until July. So round 4 decision release will go out in May, and then after that, it will be rolling admissions. We have waived application fees for all applicants who are applying. In addition to that, similar to Soojin, we are waiving the GMAT GRE for those who are unable to take the test. Now, we understand that GMAT and GRE are now offering home edition, but it's not available in all markets. So we want to be flexible. Whether a candidate has a CFA, a CPA license, those are things that will allow them potentially to be waived from that requirement. In addition to that, we've set up Slack for our admitted students so that they can get their questions answered easily compared to sending emails, because we all know right now our emails are probably just out of control. And so we want to make sure that we are addressing questions and making that our priority, because there's a lot of questions that are going on right now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's challenging times, and I'd love to come back to some of the points that you've made of in a holistic assessment in a normal year. This is anything but normal. How we can look beyond standardized tests and some of the other characteristics as we think about the work that you do to admit people. Rod, I guess from the Sloan perspective, also not just for the full-time MBA program, but also for the Sloan Fellows program that would normally that is starting in July for a slightly more senior profile of applicant. Interesting times.
Yes, indeed. And we live in most interesting times. I do agree with what's been said about how the school has reacted to this crisis, and I don't think there's any better time than now to be in a business school, because you can see the decisions that are being made by our school leaders. Probably 5, 10, 15 years from now, they'll be writing cases about this. These are leadership cases, and we're witnessing them now. And that's why it's so exciting to be at a school right now. Seeing a lot of interest from prospective applicants, this year and next year. We do expect to see a lot more applications coming, next year, and that's good for us. So we're looking forward to the new year. I'm very sure that a lot of questions about visas and the start of class in the fall and careers. I mean, that's all in our minds. I mean, it's something that we're thinking about, and we're trying our best to give our students the same dynamic and full experience, whether that's online or on campus, and still give them that rigorous learning experience that they will have. On the Sloan Fellows program, we are going virtual in the summer. So that's a decision that was made by the Institute, that the summer term will be virtual. And so we're looking forward to our Sloan Fellows students joining us this June.
And perhaps starting with you, Rod, and then I'll turn to Blair. Both of you have sort of early applications for seniors in college, or even as they complete their master's degree. And I think a lot are thinking this would be a smart time to apply. How you've then again worked with extended deadlines. Danielle was talking about the challenges of the GMAT, which has gone to home-based testing, is not available everywhere. So just talk us through, perhaps for seniors that are looking for those future plans for business school, why this might be a smart time for them to be applying to Sloan.
Absolutely. I think this is the best time to do it, because you're guaranteed a spot, whether that's in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Secure your admission now and make a decision within 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whether it's the right time for you to join, to start your business school. But I do have, a statement about the early careers applicants, and I'm sure other institutions are doing the same thing, recognizing the crisis, recognizing that many college seniors are finishing this term, online. We will look at applications holistically, and we will not penalize students who opt to do a pass fail or pass no record. That is something that we have adopted, and we know it is very difficult. So we will look at this semester's grades with some empathy, right, and with an open mindedness. So that's what we will be doing with these early careers.
Thank you for addressing that, because of course, the viewers are aware of just how selective you are, the world's top business schools, and highly selective in the admissions process. It is about admitting individuals rather than rejecting them. Blair, you similarly receive applications, and in the last year or so, it's gone beyond UPenn, to a global applicant pool of seniors. I guess similar flexibility?
Yeah, well, I'm excited to be able to talk about it because, yeah, we have been running our advanced access program for Penn students only for 2 cycles. And we actually just opened it up on the 24th of September. Of course, I know the date, it was a very big day, the 24th of September to college seniors globally. But, you know, in light of COVID-19, we actually did move the deadline back 2 full months to address exactly what Rod was addressing, from April 1st to May 27th, to give them an extra 2 months. And similarly, you know, you just said in admissions offices, we are looking to admit students. We have a policy that I've expounded my entire career, and just the phrase is read to admit, which means every application we look at, we're looking for reasons to admit it and not deny it. And I think I could say that phrase in my sleep, probably go on a business card, maybe on my tombstone. And I think that this, you know, this pandemic is no different. You know, same with Rod, we're going to be looking at pass fail grades kind of within the scheme of read to admit. It is what it is. You know, most of the application will be judged on the grades before that. I mean, there's very little students could do. Again, I always say in admissions, and I know my colleagues on this panel would agree, we're just human beings trying to make human decisions, right? And so those pass fail grades would fold right into that. But we're really excited about this cohort, and to address the testing issue for Wharton specifically, for our deferred candidates, our college seniors, our graduate students coming in. We have not waived the testing, but we are allowing them to take it either virtually through the online at home GMAT or GRE, or if the test center is open in the fall, till December 31st, 2020. So they have a ton of time to get this testing in. And again, we're human beings. Right now, that's the deadline. And I think we'll probably be able to stick to that given the increase in at-home GMAT and GRE. But if a new wave hits in the fall and test centers close again and the at-home isn't available, you know, because I know you have to meet certain parameters to take it, we'll reconsider kind of when they have to deliver that testing. But we're not going to waive it for right now, but that's where we've pushed it to.
Great. And of course, we can talk about the home-based testing and not having any scratch paper. You know, all of this you're aware of, you're taking it into consideration. Perhaps a question for Soojin and for Danielle. We've had a number of individuals, of course, looking at the coming weeks as a chance, almost an unexpected opportunity to apply to business school. Maybe they've been furloughed, you know, the industry that they're in, external factors beyond their control, because otherwise the plan had been to look at business school perhaps for 2021 or beyond. Just your perspectives, should they be waiting until next year, putting together those thoughtful applications, of course, that you're always looking to receive? And if perhaps they don't quite have that time and they're struggling with recommenders, just the alternative applying for this year. Soojin, what are your thoughts in terms of how to best approach that?
So if it were me, I would apply now in round 3, because we know that it is a candidate market right now. All schools want students, all of us. And so this is probably the best time that I've seen in all of my years in working in MBA admissions, the last 15 years, best chances for candidates to get in. And what that gives you is if you do get in, then you start this fall, and then you'll graduate in 2022 with an MBA. And hopefully by then, the world economy will be back on track and you will graduate with an MBA. If you put it off until applying in round 1 next year, you won't graduate with an MBA until 2023. So it's one less year that you'll be having the opportunities and the earning power that an MBA gets you. Now, we, like many other schools, will be waiving the reapplication fee. So you have nothing to lose to apply in round 3 this year. And if you aren't admitted, you can apply again for a round 1 or 2 next year, and we'll waive that application fee. So, and the application process itself is a lot easier in terms of the components that you need to submit. No recommendation letter, no additional interview if you interviewed the first time around. So there's nothing to lose by applying now. So I'm the kind of person who would try to maximize my chances, and you can do that by applying now and then seeing what happens.
Right. And it's interesting with some of the alumni interviews, whether it's the job market of 2022, I mean, these are the sort of individuals, from Wharton, from Sloan, from Ross, and from Kenan-Flagler that will make their own job market. I mean, they'll actually probably be the ones helping to get the economy back on track whenever they come out of school. It's those sort of individuals. I mean, are there any conditions as you look at home-based testing where then you're saying, well, yeah, it is different, compared to perhaps what people have been preparing for, and therefore you would look at those test scores with a greater tolerance?
Actually, interestingly, one of our MBA 2s who's about to graduate this week, he took the at-home GMAT just to see how it compares to the real thing. And so he's someone who got a 760 on the standard GMAT before coming to Ross. And he initially said, well, the lack of a scratch pad was an unpleasant experience, but he just got his score back today and he got a 740. And so his assessment now is that it seemed to be more accurate than he anticipated. The one thing that bugged him was that the proctor pinged him to stop thinking out loud. I guess you can't even talk to yourself when you're taking the test.
Wow.
All of our partners have a go at us when we're thinking out loud. Danielle, similar advice in terms of seizing this moment and applying for the fall?
Absolutely. I echo Soojin's thoughts. I think that now is a great time for candidates to apply. We've never been in this type of market before. However, there's been similar times like the recession of '08, like the HIV/AIDS pandemic back in the early 90s, the dot-com burst in the early 2000s. So there's been these different times and we've seen increased applications. And I encourage candidates now to apply because they will set themselves up for greater success professionally and personally by earning their MBA now. I've talked to a couple of candidates who've been going back and forth and saying, well, I have a good job opportunity, a promotion, but I've already paid my deposit. What do you think I should do? I said, well, if I were you, what are you going to see? How are you going to see the ROI the fastest, but also higher ROI? And I say, by waiting a year, is that opportunity going to be waiting for you for the MBA? But also, what are you going to get out of that job promotion? Are you looking to maybe make a pivot in your career? Now is a great time to apply, given that the application fees are waived at a lot of the programs. I'm a calculated risk taker. I would roll the dice and say, I'm going to apply and see what those are. Now, some people are questioning from an economic standpoint, financially, is this a great time for me to invest? Are fellowships still available? Can I still be considered? For a lot of us, yes, there is potential to still receive merit fellowships as well. So I highly encourage people to apply to start this year.
Right. And so whether this year, next year, of course, that fundamental principle of investing in ourselves, whatever the external conditions, whatever the markets are doing, the price of a barrel of oil. So as we look at how you holistically look at all of these different elements, perhaps Blair, back to some of the points that you were talking about, even with the HQ platform and the sort of dynamic interaction that you're looking for. Here's just a quick question. When you start with somebody's resume, do you start up at the top or do you read all of that fun stuff down at the bottom of the resume?
Matt, that's such a good question. And I could talk about evaluation and selection of files till I was blue in the face, but I will not do that to all of you. But I will say, in thinking about that, kind of like just two very quick answers. When I read an applicant file, I actually try to envision you kind of walking through your life and living your life, anytime with all components from where you grew up, where you went to high school, even that is something that always jumps out to me, where you went to college. So I always, when I train our application readers to read files, I always say, follow this person through their lives. Think about them living in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania as an 18-year-old, and then think of them moving to upstate New York to go to Syracuse and studying marketing there. Kind of what does that look like? What does that feel like? To answer your question, I had to do the little bit of the lead up to get there, is the first thing I look at on your resume is actually the college information, because I'm trying to watch you walk through your life, right? So I always view that college information, what I call, it's the pivot point, right? It's from when you left the safety of an academic environment to going into the workplace. And so the first thing I look at is the bulk of the college experience. And then I start actually with your first job out of college up, because I watch you walk through your career, right? And so I watched you take an entry-level job. I also call it a skills development ladder. What you learned in that entry-level job, I watch you walk up the ladder, get the next promotion, the next job, the next leap, and then I end with what you're currently doing in the current body of work experience.
In encouraging the sort of self-reflection, the paths that someone has taken, the choices that they have made, can you tell if someone has enjoyed applying to business school?
So is that a question for all of us or just for me? I feel, no, I actually don't think I can tell if somebody has enjoyed or not enjoyed applying to business school. I think the ways that we would find that are in the self-representation or from the essays and from the interviews. The interviews, we can probably tell a little bit more who enjoys our interview format versus not enjoying our interview format. But I think in my experience, I can't suss that out, but I would be very interested in what my colleagues have to say about that question.
Right. I mean, I think
Rod, you've read a couple of applications, right, in your career.
Several.
When I talk about that enjoyment, that sort of, it's an opportunity to step back, whether for the full-time MBA, whether for the Sloan Fellow.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, I myself enjoy reading applications. I enjoy meeting candidates, interviewing them. And then one thing I could say that if applicants find the application process painful, maybe this is not the right direction for them. They have to enjoy it, right? I mean, you are actually putting all your best assets on an 8-page application, and if you find that painful, maybe it's not the right time, or maybe it's not the right place. You should enjoy it. You should have some sense of satisfaction when you submit that application. You should be proud of what you've done, what you've accomplished, and that comes across very. It's something that we see in the application. It jumps at you. You see how much effort someone has put. In the application. Same thing with interviews. How much preparation they've made before the interview. And I'm not talking about memorizing your lines or developing a script, but just this whole presence and readiness. And that's all very visible when we read the application and when we talk to candidates.
Right. Because of course, we swim in the data points of GPA and GMAT or GRE, but you as business schools receive applications from lots of smart people, lots of strong academic rigor, perhaps competitive standardized test scores. So what you're describing, or something that then emerges a sense of self-awareness, or how they're then able to capture and share that with you.
Yes. No, absolutely. I think, was it Blair Blair, you wanted to jump in?
Sorry. Oh, no. Yeah. That's fine. Continue on the answer to this question. That's totally
okay. Right. I'm sorry. So I lost my thought. So what was it? Can you repeat the question?
The sort of beyond those data points,
yes.
You all receive applications from high performers and fast track.
Right. Absolutely.
There's an element of introspection that emerges in what they share with you.
Sure. I mean, absolutely. When I look at an application, you look at the numbers pretty quickly. Once you're past that, then you look for other things. We're not really looking to maximize those scores or those grades. I mean, we use them as a screen. Then after that, you look for other things. You look for other data in the application, data that would lead you to making a decision whether you want to meet this person or not, and get more data once you meet that person. So that's how I would look at an application. Someone else might have a different approach, but I've been doing it for so many years, and I've made mistakes. I'll admit that, but and I'll tell you, I mean, in cases where someone has applied more than two times or three times, and then we admit them at the fourth time or third time, whatever, and you meet and they're in school, and you realize, why did we even turn down this person? This person turned out to be great, and and maybe the answer there was that maybe 4 years ago it was not the right time for this person, right? So that's probably the answer, because I'm puzzled why sometimes we turn someone down and we admit them and they turn out to be very good. And so timing, well, not exactly when they, but when, timing, when are they ready? Are they ready to go to business school now? Yeah.
Right. Which also implies that in reapplying to business school, of course, you're then able to share perhaps how you've continued to evolve, new responsibilities
Absolutely.
that you've taken on that journey that Blair was describing earlier. Right. Blair, I think you had a comment you wanted to add, then I was going to ask.
I know. I was just thinking about how, at the Wharton MBA Admissions Committee, we really do think and believe that the application process itself is a proxy for the type of professional you were before business school and then after business school. So, the quick comment I wanted to make before we were talking about, you can tell how prepared, what Rod was saying, for interviews. You can tell how prepared people are for business school interviews or how unprepared. And we feel like there's a direct line there that we've all likely interviewed folks that are not prepared to come in for a professional interview versus the folks that have been prepared to come for a professional interview. And so again, Wharton really feels that we are a school. And so even in the application process, we really try to kind of put our students through, like, this is what the real world feels like after business school, and kind of running them through that proxy. And I will say, like, a lot of the components of what we're looking for in the application process are actually tied to a huge process we have at Wharton that's been going on over the last 5 years, where we've been tracking really deeply our student outcomes. So the inbound data from the admissions process relative to who actually does well in both the classroom, that would be kind of the easiest one, but also their career search, and then who they are as members of our community. So, right, Rod, I also have those cases where I say, why didn't we admit that person, right? But we're 5 years into a feedback loop right now saying, like, these are the types of students that really do well at Wharton, and we're able to kind of look at and feed that into our admissions process. So just two quick things on how we evaluate candidates.
And as we look at individuals and institutions, Soojin, I'm reminded of a wonderful spreadsheet that you put together 2-3 years ago that just helped any applicant to the top business schools on this panel and beyond, just in terms of their own thought process of what they were looking for from the business school experience. And I think I would imagine from that spreadsheet, that helps to articulate, and it's something that then comes through in the applications that you read at Ross, how an individual has been able to identify certain characteristics of a school, the value system, alignment. Is that something that really matters to your team?
Absolutely. I think it's really important before students apply, and absolutely before they start business school, that they have a pretty clear picture about what's important to them and what they want to get out of that experience. We find that the students who are most successful in the program are those who have given deep thought to that and have kind of a true north about what they want to do during the 2 years, because it goes by really quickly, and there's so many opportunities that you're going to get, so many experiences that you wouldn't be able to have if you stayed in your job. Opportunities to develop your leadership skills, your communication skills, your knowledge base, your network. And you have to be very thoughtful and intentional about how you spend your time, because that's going to be the most precious commodity. And so the applicants who go through that process before they submit their application, I think already have a leg up on the students who didn't as they come into the program, because there are so many choices to make. And when you are surrounded by interesting people, interesting opportunities, you get lost in, what do I really want to do? And so having that spreadsheet of what's really important to me, what do I want to get out of it, and how do different schools stack up based on both the research that you do online, your visits, and then especially the conversations that you have with the students, with the alumni, to get a sense for, will this be a place that fits with what I want to get out of it, the kind of experience that I want to have. I just wanted to go back to your earlier question about, can you tell if someone's enjoyed the application process? I think the applicants who do that self-reflection, end up enjoying the experience of applying, and end up enjoying business school and getting more out of it, because they're taking a pause and taking stock and figuring out, where am I now? Where do I want to go? And what are the things I need to get there? And so students, once they are admitted and they come to the program, will often tell me, thank you for those essay questions. Thank you for those interview questions. They really made me think about what I want. And it's taking a pause that I wouldn't have done without this process. Right. So that's something that we hope that students will keep in their their toolkit as they progress through their careers to take that pause before they take the next job or switch industries or make that next big move. Why are you doing it? And what do you want to get out of it?
Mm-hmm. And as we look at those characteristics of an institution, I'm going to frame the next question as perhaps strengths and stereotypes. And Danielle, if I can start with you, beyond leadership, beyond so many core strengths of the Kenan-Flagler program, whether it's in real estate or other sectors, there are some very strong specializations. And then I'll turn to Blair, Rod in turn, both for those strengths and how people might identify them, and perhaps also when the stereotypes, when you feel that you've been pigeonholed and you want to sort of say, no, we're more than that, or the institution has evolved. What would you sort of point to as core strengths and a stereotype you'd want to move beyond?
Yeah, for a university, we are leaders within, we're the first state school in the U.S., state university in the U.S. So we've become a long way. We are ranked #1 for our online MBA program, and we've been in the online education sector for over 10 years. So, there's been a lot of questions or schools like, how do we make this pivot into online learning? And our faculty, our university was 98% online before students came back from spring break with all of their courses. So I think that just speaks to how resilient and how innovative our community is here at Kenan-Flagler. And so, some of the things that we look for in our candidates is high EQ. Yes, IQ is very important, but we want to make sure that we have leaders that are human, and that they're more than just a test score. That is a certain component of the application, but in the interview, we can find out a lot about a candidate and what are their strengths. How are they going to bring that strength and be a value add within the classroom at Kenan-Flagler, and within the MBA specifically too. As our students, I've learned more and more over the past few weeks is, everyone's like, oh, everyone's going online. Yes, that's important, but it's for a certain type of person. Not everybody wants to be in that online environment. And I see more and more that a full-time MBA program is here to stay because people like that interaction in person. We're the smaller of the top 20 MBA programs. We still bring in a class size of about 250. And so you get to know each other. We have what you call legacies at Kenan-Flagler, and it's kind of like Harry Potter houses. I'm sure most of us have seen Harry Potter. And so they really, by the end of that first mod, they have taken a class with one of their classmates. And by the end of mod 2, all of their classmates. So we really have that family environment. And it's, I like to say we're elite, but without the elitism mentality.
So there's some wonderful, I should have been writing more of this down. Luckily, everything has been recorded, so I'll be able to go back to some of the great comments that you've made. Blair, perhaps turning to you, if we go back 2008, placing 47% of the Wharton MBA class into finance, but healthcare, real estate, retail 3.0, Warby Parker style. I mean, there's so much going on at Wharton. There's now a new entrepreneurial incubator. So the core strengths, but what are the stereotypes that you want to move beyond?
Matt, I would just like to thank you for doing my job. That was a great answer to the question. That was lovely. No, I actually want to refer to a session we had in Wharton HQ yesterday from one of our graduate presidents, we call it the WGA, Wharton Graduate Association. And she said she was going through her decision-making process and deciding to come to the Wharton MBA over some of our peers. And she said that Wharton, she was admitted, she was really excited, but she didn't think Wharton was the place for her. She didn't think she would fit. She was going to come to Welcome Weekend kind of just out of a little, curiosity, a little courtesy, and then go on to kind of where she really wanted to go. And she said that she came to our Welcome Weekend and engaged with our community, and the whole thing turned around because I think, in our particular case, I think we have a reputation that we're finance, period. And I think, we really need to get across that we're finance and we're really proud of our financial background. And we're not going to shirk away from the fact that we do believe we teach that, at the highest levels. And Dean Jeff Garrett has actually doubled down on that in the last 12 to 18 months, opening 2 new financial centers, the Stevens Center for Innovation in Finance, and the Future of Finance and Financial Technology. So there's a lot of finance energy going on at Wharton right now, but exactly what you just said, Matt. We are on track in the spring of 2021 to to open our new entrepreneurship center, Tangen Hall. It's an entire city block, 8 stories. It kind of looks like an Apple store. It's all glass. And we really hope kind of the energy around Wharton will be funneled into that entrepreneurial effort. There's a ton of energy around entrepreneurship at Wharton. And I think people don't always think about that when they think about us, but I will say that sometimes we get the reputation for finance period, but we really are finance and most of the energy is really being driven into those sources, and students that connect with our community see that right away. And that's what we're trying to recreate in this digital age. We knew it probably wasn't enough to do some Zoom interactions. And so we really tried to double down on those community connections to show who we really are. And that's really what my team has spent the most time doing over the last 3 weeks.
Rod, perhaps talking
Yes.
both about the relationship between Sloan and MIT, but
Right.
also some of the wonderful labs, the S Lab that you have that looks at sort of for-profit social enterprise. I mean, these are wonderful gems within a great program.
Absolutely.
Do you like it when applicants bring these to your attention? It sort of shows that they've really looked to do their due diligence and research.
Yes, absolutely. S Lab, Sustainability Lab, it's just one of the many labs. We call them letters labs because they go from A to Z. Analytics Lab, Leadership Lab, we have Global Entrepreneurship Lab. But before addressing your question, let me just start by saying that you had asked about stereotypes. Really, the important thing to say to the audience is throw out all the rankings, the school rankings, right? I mean, rankings are only good for publications. The best business school is the one that's really best for you. And I encourage applicants to really do their due diligence and really find out what's the right school for them. Pre-COVID-19 days, we had class visits. We're looking at ways of extending that, hopefully virtually, and hopefully we'll all be back, on campus. So prospective applicants again can come and visit. And I encourage prospective applicants to have a very, very close look at each of the schools they're considering, because beyond stereotypes, there are some gems that they'll find in the schools. When I joined MIT back in the late 80s, I'm showing my age, we tried to run away from our label, the label being, a technology school. But now everyone's talking about high tech and high technology. And so along with other areas such as finance, and I also remember in around 2008, 2007, was the first time I heard the word sustainability. And it was in conjunction with the S Lab that you mentioned. And now it's a buzzword. Everyone's, talking about sustainability. But business analytics is another strength of the MBA program. And we offer that in conjunction with our operations research center. Of course, entrepreneurship, since the mid 80s, we launched back then the 5K business plan writing contest. It became 10K and then 15K, 25, 50, and now it's 100K business plan writing contest. It has launched several, businesses. And now, we're, in school, people are talking about AI, and cybersecurity. I mean, those are things that will matter, in a few years. And, healthcare is also another thing that's, that you will find at MIT. And I'm sure you'll find that at other schools as well.
Well, if, it's going to be these business school graduates, whether it's in the healthcare fields, the future of finance, machine learning, I think, that they will be setting the agenda for all of these things. Soojin, somebody has very thoughtfully shared, either in the chat or in the Q&A, the spreadsheet that we were talking about. And I do recommend everybody, it's a really helpful document to sort of ask yourself the sort of qualities, characteristics that you look for in a school. Perhaps my final question, and then I'd like to just draw from one or two that have been coming in. Well, this actually picks up on a number of those questions. as we look at next year, and bearing in mind the advice that you'd even given for those throwing their hat into the ring in the coming months, the chances are it will be a very competitive application cycle. You know, we've always seen historically that economic downturns, the counter cycle of applications that then come into business school. So perhaps just for all four of you, as we draw this session to a close, you know, what you would then share for any applicant that is looking to stand out in the applicant pool, whether on a personal level, how they communicate with you, the research that they've done with schools, that one great conversation they had with the president of a club at the school. So Soojin, if I can start with you. It's not the first time you've been asked for admissions advice, but if you were to distill it, you know, really this year or next, how an applicant can really, you know, do well by themselves in putting together their application.
I think it goes back to that self-introspection piece of really knowing who you are, what your values are, what's important to you, and taking that time to take stock as you put your application together, because that will come through in the stories that you choose to share, in how you talk about the things that you have in your application. I think you do yourself a disservice if you just fill in all the blanks and tell your work stories without giving a lot of thought to who you are, how you tick, what your values are, and what matters to you, because that's going to help lead you to the school that's going to be the best fit for you. The reality is all of our schools are really pretty more similar than we are different. The classes are more similar than they are different, and we offer so many experiences that are more similar than different. And so at the end of the day, you have to know what is going to feel right to you. And a lot of that boils down to the people that you interact with at a school. Now, you can't do that in person right now, but you can still do that virtually. And there are a lot of ways to engage with members of our community, whether it's student ambassadors or the admissions staff or alumni. I really encourage you to take that time to get to know schools through the people, because that will help you make a better decision, and it will also help you make a better application as well.
Great, that's a great place to start. So if I could get both that sort of big picture advice, Danielle, but also something very special for the school, who of course the number 23 shirt in the basketball team was worn so proudly for so many years by Michael Jordan. One of our questions was someone that has been a professional athlete since graduating from college. He's played professional hockey for 3 years, and wondering if that counts for something in an application. You know, the diversity that you look for. So perhaps we can speak to his question, and then you know, that one piece of advice that you'd share more broadly.
Absolutely. And I hope everyone has been watching Michael Jordan the past, 2 weeks. He, Carolina blue through and through. But it's not just Michael Jordan. We do have a lot of athletes. 6 of the women's soccer members on the U.S. Nationals women's soccer team came from UNC. Now, particularly, they didn't get their MBA, but we have a lot of professional athletes that come from UNC Chapel Hill. We do have students in the program that have athletic backgrounds, and it shows, I'm an athlete myself. There's something, you learn a team component and you learn a leadership component. And this is through experiential learning that you're getting on the field and off the field. As a daughter of a college baseball coach, I have a soft spot in my heart for athletes, because they do bring a sense of teamwork, camaraderie, and the time management as well for student athletes is critical, because they're balancing, if you're a division, 1, and you have a rigorous athletic schedule combined with, maybe finishing in 3 years of your academics in a business school, that speaks volumes to your tenacity, your work ethic. And I think that athletes can do very well in an MBA programs. And same, on that flip side, musicians as well. Like they can do very well on GMAT tests, GREs, and do very well in the classroom too.
I asked the right question, or the right person for the question about athleticism is in your blood, and it is this wonderful diversity, the richness of the class. Blair, you've recorded a wonderful video that talks about this holistic admissions process, and I'm sure would certainly encourage everybody to watch that. Beyond that, perhaps that one additional piece of advice that you'd want to share to this audience?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So reflecting on that question, I just keep thinking and replaying our dean, Jeff Garrett's, he did a LinkedIn post, I want to say maybe 3 weeks into the crisis, where he was talking about the future of leadership. I think, Rod, you did a great job of teeing this up, that students coming to MBA programs are going to be the future leaders of the world, right? And that's what we're trying to train them to do. And Jeff Garrett kind of said very openly and directly, the next leaders, we're in a new world right now. We're going to be hopefully in a post COVID-19 world soon, and our leaders need to be open, they need to be real, and they need to be vulnerable. And I would say, like, that's what we're all trying to do at Wharton. We're trying to be open and real, transparent and vulnerable. And so I would say, going into the next application cycle, I think, and this is me just, projecting, but I think any application in a post COVID-19 world that doesn't feel open and vulnerable is not going to ring true to the time. And so that would be my best guess. We've all been through a lot these last 7 weeks, and some communities even more. Matt, you're in Paris, you guys have different restrictions than we do here in the States. We've all been through a lot. And I think failing to address what we've been through in the past year by the time of application would be a real missed opportunity. And I'm looking forward to reading those stories of grit and how people overcame some really tough things in our applicant pool. So, trying to find the silver lining for a tough time, at least we get to learn about those stories.
Will you be looking for, how might I describe it, COVID attitude? The idea that once we've watched that Michael Jordan documentary on Netflix, there was that period of adjustment for all of us. It's been such an extraordinary set of circumstances. But do you think that you will see certain aspects of how people, even with lockdowns, how certain patterns of behavior, initiatives that they've nevertheless taken, from within their own homes to still have a positive impact on the community?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think, I hope that not, so I think that people's approaches to what's been going on are also personal and also different, right? So I don't think I could say that we're going to see, 4 to 6 archetypes of essays and personal statements in the application pool next year. And at least I hope not. I really hope people are all kind of coming at this problem from a personal space, and they're able to write about it in a really open and honest space. So I personally hope that we don't start to see, way I dealt with COVID-19 1, 2, 3, and 4, kind of in these 4 buckets, and we'll admit accordingly, you overcame X, you overcame Y. I really hope it doesn't come to that. But I think that people are all dealing with this in such different ways and have such different challenges to the same problem. We say this at Wharton all the time. We're all dealing with the same problem. And it's hard for everybody for drastically different reasons. If you're single, you're alone and you're lonely. If you have a family, it's how do you take care of that family? If you have adult children, they're mourning the loss of, high school and college. And so I know, Matt, you mentioned you have children that really run the age bracket. So unfortunately, you're dealing with all of it, which that could be an essay in and of itself. But I think that vulnerable piece is going to come out in the fall. And I really hope it does, because I think that there'll be little toleration in the world, brass tacks for people that are not open, transparent, and vulnerable in this new world.
Right. Yeah. So COVID attitude, perhaps Rod, finishing with you, COVID circumstances. You talked earlier from that warmth of that beautiful kitchen of yours of understanding whether it's transcripts and pass fail, but people will be furloughed. They'll work in industries where suddenly their job prospects. How do we take that into account?
No, absolutely. Pardon. It is going to be a very interesting year, for all of us. That is for sure. And we don't know what kind of applicants we will see, in the coming year, and what sort of characteristics they will present to us. So we're given a choice, and we select from those choices. But I think some of the things we'd like to see in our applicants coming into the program next year or in 2 years would be resilience, especially in these times, and how resilient they are. It's, we're not living in normal times. And so that is, important. Improvising, how we're able to improvise, given the situation, those are things that we would like to see. And also taking risk. And I'm not talking about going out without wearing a mask, right? But it's about the ability to weigh options and taking risk making decision without all the information available. And I think that those are very, very important things that that we'd like to see in in the next generation of students and alumni.
It's going to be a busy year next year, following on from a very long summer. I'm mindful of just how committed all four of you are and your colleagues to bringing in the class of the fall, and then attention to next year's class. It's exhausting, and I think you've shared with tremendous sensitivity and insight and empathy everything that you then try to bring to your work in admitting those classes. So thank you for taking this hour to share with us, and good luck in the coming weeks. I know that Danielle and Soojin, you'll be joining us on Hoover, I think, for some of the questions that have been coming in. To Rod and to Blair, take care of those families of yours, to everybody.
Thank you.
And thank you very, very much for your time and everything that you've shared with us.
And likewise, to you, my colleagues, and everyone who's with us today.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you,
us.
everyone.